Hey there, and welcome to Dark Blue Nutrition. My name is Katie, dietitian and personal trainer, and it is my personal goal to help you build your confidence, fuel your body, and overcome emotional eating by discovering the intuitive eater within you. If this sounds like you, then be sure to hit the subscribe button below so you can watch new videos every single week and be a part of the Dark Blue community. So let's jump into today's topic. We're going to talk about how to neutralize our language when it comes to food talk. So what exactly do I mean by this? When it comes to food, we tend to label it in a way that indicates that it's either good food or bad food. The problem when we do this is that we tend to label ourselves as good or bad if we have a good food or a bad food. So we want to get away from this when we're developing the intuitive eater within us, because this leads to guilt, it leads to shame, which leads to a cycle furthermore of deprivation, craving, and binging. And we want to stay away from that. We want to have a positive relationship with food and not let food be something that is constantly on our minds, something that controls us, and something that leads to constant guilt and shame. So today we're going to talk about a few phrases to stay away from, and then a few phrases that you can replace these words or phrases with in order to have that more neutral or positive association with all foods. So first, let's start with some phrases to stay away from. We'll start with the obvious: good and bad. Even when you label a food as good, it puts certain foods on this pedestal, and then it puts other foods that may not be as nutrient dense in the hall of shame, so to speak. So there's this like hierarchy of foods in your mind, and that eventually leads to guilt. So avoiding calling foods good and bad is a place that you can start when you're neutralizing your language around food. Also, something I hear quite frequently is cheat meals. You definitely want to stay away from that language, because cheat, I feel like, is the number one trigger word that people have that leads to that guilt in your mind. No foods are cheat foods. All foods are just foods. So no more cheat meals, no more cheat snacks, no more cheat anything. Even language like, this is my treat, this is my reward, I earned this. These can all be phrases that can potentially trigger that guilt and shame feeling. These are just a few phrases that you potentially want to stay away from to avoid triggering that guilt in your mind. Comment below if there's any other words that come to mind when you think of that association with guilt and food. Another kind of phrase that I hear quite often is, I was bad this weekend. I went to my friend's birthday party and I was bad. I went out to a restaurant and I was bad. If you want to speak the lingo of an intuitive eater, try saying something that's a little less judgmental on yourselves. You know, you are human too. Everyone out there is human, and we don't always eat perfectly. It's okay. It's just life. And life is full of social hours, it's full of birthday parties, celebrations, and it's bound to happen sometimes that you're not going to eat perfectly. So be forgiving and try to say something along the lines of this: this weekend I didn't listen to my hunger and fullness cues, but I'm moving on. I'm moving on with life. This day is a new day. This meal is a new meal, and I'm going to keep going and do exactly what's going to fuel my body. You don't have to say that to a T. That's a pretty long quote to remember. However, you get the gist of what's going to be a little more forgiving for yourself. So what are some good options for phrases or words that we can use instead of the words aforementioned? So what can you focus on instead? Focus on how a food impacts you physically and mentally, and how long it'll stay kind of in your system for the short term. And you can even think about it in long term. So for example, one thing that you can ask yourself is, how is this food going to fuel me? How am I going to feel 2 to 3 hours after I have this food? Is it going to make me feel tired and sluggish, or is it going to make me feel energized and full for a couple more hours? Is this food what is going to satisfy my hunger right now? For example, are you trying to mask your hunger with a bunch of raw vegetables when you really just want one slice of pizza? Have that slice of pizza. These are just some things to run through your mind when you're trying to really intuitively eat. If you need to call foods by a certain name, because that is just how English language works, we need words for certain types of foods, then you can call it something like fun foods, sometimes foods, play foods, anything that doesn't trigger you, that gives it a language of, these are foods that I sometimes have, that I have on occasion, that I have because I enjoy them, but it's not a part of every meal. Not because of the nutritional content of it necessarily, not because I'm afraid of these foods, but just because this food is not going to fuel me long term. If you had a piece of cake for every single meal of every single day, you would probably feel extremely sick. And it's not because you should be afraid of cake, it's just because cake isn't designed to fuel you like a balanced meal of protein, carbs, fruits, veggies, oils is. So essentially, your body intuitively knows how to find that balance and how to strike that balance. It can have soul foods, but most of the time it's going to crave those lean proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Just in case that you need a reminder, you are not bad for having a food that some people may deem bad or that isn't nutritionally dense. Food does not make you a good or bad human being. You are a good human being despite any choice that you make, no matter what anyone or the food police out there tell you. Yes, it is a good idea to have a variety of foods a majority of the time just for your nutritional health, but that doesn't make or break whether or not you're a good person. It's unfortunate, but I feel that a lot of times nowadays we have a lot of shame surrounding foods, and we feel that we need to shame people into eating right, or to shame people or scare people into being healthy. And that puts a lot of fear around diets, and it puts a lot of fear in the hearts of people that go to see registered dietitians, maybe even go to see personal trainers. And honestly, that makes me extremely sad. I know that a lot of times when people talk to me, they probably feel afraid or nervous because they think I'm going to judge them. And that's just not the case for all dietitians and personal trainers. Maybe some, but most of them, that's not the case. One thing I just think is so important to know in this video is that shame is not going to lead to long-lasting healthy change. When I think of the word shame, I think of my favorite author, Brené Brown, and some of her quotes come to my head, and I brought a few of them today just to maybe give you guys something to walk away with. We cannot grow when we're in shame, and we cannot use shame to change ourselves or others. Shame corrodes the very part of us that believes we're capable of change. We live in a world where most people still subscribe to the belief that shame is a good tool for keeping people in line. Not only is this wrong, but it's dangerous. Shame is highly correlated with addiction, violence, aggression, depression, eating disorders, and bullying. So that goes for how other people treat you, and it also goes for how you treat yourself. So don't give yourself the bullying treatment. Treat yourself with kindness, treat yourself with compassion, and you'll find that eating healthier is so much easier. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I enjoyed talking about it, and I would love to hear from all you guys in the comments. What are some phrases that you're going to take away from your language, and what are some that you're going to add in this week? If you're interested in more free content, make sure you're subscribed. Check out the podcast links that I have below and other free content that I have on my blog. And otherwise, have a mindful meal for me this week, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.